Ambassador Thelver had spent 300 years preparing for first contact missions. He had greeted 17 different species on behalf of the Galactic Council, and each time, the process followed the same peaceful pattern. A new species would achieve faster-than-light travel. The Council would send a diplomatic vessel, and within weeks, the newcomers would join the greater galactic community. It was always smooth. It was always predictable. Humanity would be different. Thelver knew this the moment his ship entered Earth's solar system and detected the weapons. Not primitive missiles or simple explosives, but sophisticated arrays of orbital defense platforms, each one capable of destroying his vessel in seconds. The humans had barely achieved FTL travel 6 months ago, yet they had already militarized their home system as if expecting invasion at any moment. His second officer, a young Zenari named Pelmuth, studied the scanner readings with growing concern. "Ambassador, they have weapons pointed at us from 4 different positions. Should we retreat?" "No," Thelver said, though his throat sac tightened with anxiety. "Send the standard greeting. Let them know we come in peace." The response came within minutes. A human voice, female and surprisingly calm, filled the bridge. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. State your intentions." Thelver activated the translator and spoke slowly, clearly. "Greetings from the Galactic Council. We are here to welcome humanity to the stars. We mean no harm and wish only to establish diplomatic relations." There was a long pause. Then the human spoke again. "Stand by for security screening. Any hostile action will be met with immediate force. Maintain your current position." Pelmuth's skin shifted to a worried purple. "They're threatening us? We're here to welcome them." But Thelver noticed something else. 3 human warships had appeared on the scanner, moving to flank positions around his diplomatic vessel. They were small, barely a third the size of council ships, but they moved with startling speed and precision. More concerning was their design. Every line, every curve seemed built for one purpose: combat. "They don't know us," Thelver said quietly. "They're being cautious." This is understandable. What he didn't say was that no other species had greeted the Council with weapons hot and targeting solutions locked. Most new species were so excited to meet other intelligent life that they practically threw open their airlocks. Humans approached first contact like a battlefield negotiation. The security screening took 6 hours. Human ships scanned his vessel with technology that was crude but effective. They demanded passenger manifests, weapon inventories, and detailed explanations for every piece of equipment on board. When they finally granted permission to land, they assigned an armed escort to accompany the shuttle down. Thelver's first view of Earth took his breath away. The planet was beautiful, covered in blue oceans and green continents, swirling white clouds in the atmosphere. It reminded him of a dozen peaceful worlds he had visited. But as the shuttle descended, he saw the reality beneath the beauty. Cities sprawled across the continents, massive and densely packed. But between the cities were other structures: military bases, weapons testing facilities, fortified borders between nations. The humans weren't unified. They had achieved space travel while still divided into competing factions, something that shouldn't have been possible. Every species in the galaxy had united their homeworld before reaching for the stars. Every species except this one. The landing site was a military installation. Soldiers in combat armor lined the landing pad, weapons held ready. Not pointed at the shuttle, but ready. Always ready. A human stepped forward as the shuttle door opened. She was tall, with dark skin and sharp eyes that seemed to calculate threat levels automatically. "Ambassador Thelver? I'm General Sarah Okonkwo. Welcome to Earth." Thelver descended the ramp slowly, keeping his movements peaceful and deliberate. "Thank you, General. I look forward to—" "We'll need to run some additional scans," she interrupted. Standard procedure for foreign biological entities. Hope you understand. It wasn't standard procedure. It was paranoia. But Thelver nodded and submitted to the scans, the tests, the endless questions. The humans were polite but thorough, treating first contact like a potential security breach. Over the following weeks, Thelver met with human leaders from various nations. He presented the Council's offer: membership in galactic civilization, access to advanced technology, trade agreements, and cultural exchange. The humans listened with interest, asked intelligent questions, and then surprised him by requesting a recess to discuss among themselves. "We need time to consider," said the human diplomat, a man named Chung. "This is a significant decision for our species." "Of course," Thelver said. "Take all the time you need." What he learned during that recess horrified him. Palmuth had been assigned to study human culture and history. The young Zenari returned each day with increasingly disturbing reports. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. They had developed agriculture, writing, and mathematics, while simultaneously perfecting the art of killing each other. Their literature was filled with stories of conflict. Their children played games that simulated combat. Their greatest heroes were often warriors. "Ambassador," Palma said one evening, his skin a sickly gray, "I watched their military training exercises today. They train constantly, obsessively. And they're good at it. Terrifyingly good." Thelver had seen it too. He had visited a human military academy and watched young soldiers train. What struck him wasn't just their skill, but the speed at which they learned. A weapon system that would take a Zenari soldier years to master, humans learned in months. They adapted tactics on the fly, improvised solutions to problems, and thought about warfare with a creativity that should have been applied to art or science. During a dinner with General Okonkwo, Thelver finally asked the question that haunted him. "Your species achieved space travel while still fighting each other. How is that possible?" Okonkwo took a sip of wine and smiled sadly. "Competition drives innovation, Ambassador. Unfortunately, nothing drives innovation faster than war. We reached for the stars because we were afraid of each other. Every nation wanted to get there first, to have the high ground. Space travel wasn't about exploration for us. It was about survival. But the other species probably didn't evolve on a planet like Earth," Okonkwo said. "Our world has been trying to kill us since we climbed down from the trees. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, and eventually each other. We learned to fight because if we didn't, we died. It's in our DNA, Ambassador. Violence isn't something we studied. It's something we are." Thelver felt his throat sack constrict. This was worse than he thought. Humanity hadn't developed a culture of warfare. They had evolved for it. That night, he composed his report to the Council. He wrote carefully, choosing each word with precision, but his conclusion was clear. Humanity was too dangerous to join galactic civilization. They learned violence the way other species learn language, naturally and instinctively. They were divided, aggressive, and far too good at warfare. He recommended immediate quarantine. Humanity should be isolated, observed from a distance, and perhaps contacted again in 1,000 years, when they had evolved beyond their violent nature, if they survived that long. Thelver encrypted the message and sent it to the Council, then sat in his quarters looking out at the lights of human cities below. Somewhere down there, children were playing war games. Soldiers were training for battles that might never come. Weapons were being designed, tested, improved. He wondered if he had just saved the galaxy or condemned an innocent species. The answer would come sooner than he expected. The Council's response arrived 3 months later. They agreed with Thelver's assessment. Humanity would be quarantined indefinitely, monitored from a distance but denied contact with other species. The vote had been unanimous. Even the most peaceful council members agreed that introducing humanity to the galaxy was too dangerous. Thelver was preparing to deliver the news when the distress signal arrived. It came from Zinar Prime, his homeworld. The signal was fragmented, desperate, barely coherent. Under attack, Rel ships, thousands of them, need help. Then nothing but static. Pelmomt's hands shook as he tried to clean up the signal. It can't be. The Krell have been extinct for 2,000 years. But they weren't extinct. Somehow, somewhere, they had survived and rebuilt. And now they were back. The Galactic Council emergency session lasted 18 hours. Reports flooded in from across council space. The Krell had destroyed 2 colony worlds already, killing billions. Their fleet was massive, hundreds of ships, all connected to a single hive mind. And they were heading toward the core worlds, toward planets that had known peace for millennia. The Council fleet mobilized immediately, but everyone knew the truth. Council ships were designed for exploration and peacekeeping. They had weapons, but they were meant to intimidate, not to fight real wars. The last major conflict had been 3,000 years ago. No living council member had military experience beyond basic training. The Zanari representative stood before the council, her voice breaking. My world has 6 billion people. Our defense fleet has 40 ships. The Krell have over 300 approaching our system. We have days, maybe hours. Please, we need help. The council chamber fell silent. No one had an answer. No one except Thelver. He stood slowly, his throat sacked tight with emotion. There is one species that could help. One species with military capability. The humans? The Altarian counselor's voice was sharp with disbelief. You just recommended we quarantine them. I did, because they're dangerous. Because they're too good at war. Thelver looked around the chamber. But right now, that's exactly what we need. The debate lasted another 6 hours. Many council members argued against it. Bringing humans into galactic affairs, especially during a crisis, could set a dangerous precedent. But as more reports came in, as the death toll rose, the arguments weakened. Finally, the vote was called. By a narrow margin, the council agreed to contact humanity and request military assistance. In exchange, they would offer full council membership and access to all galactic technology. Thelver made the call himself. General Okonko's face appeared on the screen, and he could see she already knew something was wrong. Ambassador, you look troubled. General, the galaxy is under attack. We need your help. He explained everything. The Krell, the destroyed worlds, the threat to Zenara Prime. As he spoke, he watched Okonkwo's expression change from concern to calculation. She was already thinking tactically, already planning. I'll need to consult with our governments, she said. But Ambassador, I can tell you right now what the answer will be. When do you need us? Days ago, Thelver said quietly. The Krell are already at my homeworld. Okonkwo nodded. Give me 18 hours. The human governments move faster than Thelver thought possible. Within 12 hours, they had mobilized their entire military. Every nation contributed ships, weapons, and soldiers. Ancient rivalries were set aside. Political disputes were tabled. Humanity, so divided on their own world, united the moment someone else needed help. Thelver watched the human fleet assemble near Earth. 57 warships, each one bristling with weapons. They weren't large like council vessels, but they moved with predatory grace. And they were fast. Admiral Chun commanded the fleet from the carrier Beijing. She was General Okonkwo's sister, and she had the same sharp eyes, the same calculating mind. When Thelver boarded her ship, she greeted him with a firm handshake. Ambassador, thank you for trusting us with this. I'm not sure I trust you, Thelver admitted. But you're our only hope. Chun smiled grimly. That's honest. I appreciate that. Now, tell me everything you know about the Krell. Thelver provided all the historical data the Council had. The Krell were a hive mind, thousands of individual drones controlled by a central intelligence. They fought with overwhelming numbers, sacrificing drones without hesitation to achieve objectives. Their ships were biological, grown rather than built, and they adapted quickly to threats. Chun absorbed the information, asked dozens of questions, and then started issuing orders. Within hours, the human fleet was underway, jumping to FTL speeds that made Thulver's stomach turn. They reached Zenara Prime, just as the Krell began their final assault. The Council fleet was in ruins, burning hulks drifting in orbit. Krell ships swarmed the planet's defenses like insects, relentless and coordinated. All ships, this is Admiral Chung. Engage at will. Target priority. Protect civilian evacuation zones. The human fleet didn't hesitate. They dove into the battle with ferocious intensity, weapons blazing. Delver watched from the Beijing's bridge, horrified and fascinated by what he saw. The humans fought nothing like the Council fleet. Where Council ships tried to maintain formation and fight defensively, humans were aggressive, almost reckless. They used tactics Delver had never seen. Small groups of ships would break off, draw Krell forces away, then lead them into ambushes. Kamikaze drones screamed into Krell formations, sacrificing themselves to take down larger vessels in the speed. The terrifying speed with which humans adapted. Within the first hour of battle, Chun had identified a weakness in Krell ship hulls and redistributed her fleet to exploit it. By hour 2, human fighter pilots were using debris fields as cover, something Council doctrine said was too dangerous. Target the command ships, Chun ordered. Cut off the head, the body dies. Admiral, Thelver said carefully, the Krell hive mind doesn't work like that. Destroying command ships won't. Watch, Chun said. Human ships focused fire on the largest Krell vessels. When one exploded, the surrounding drones hesitated for just a moment, their movements uncoordinated. It was barely 3 seconds, but human pilots exploited that gap ruthlessly, tearing through the confused drones. They need connection to the hive mind, Chun explained. Break that connection, even briefly, and they're vulnerable. Every complex system has a weakness, Ambassador. You just have to find it. The battle raged for 16 hours. The human fleet lost 12 ships, thousands of soldiers. But they held the line. The Krell were pushed back, their assault broken. By the time reinforcements arrived from other Council worlds, the immediate threat had passed. Thelver stood on the Beijing's observation deck, watching rescue ships evacuate wounded from damaged vessels. Both human and Zenari medics worked together, saving who they could. Admiral Chun joined him, her uniform stained with sweat and ash. She looked exhausted. Thank you, Thelver said. You saved my world. We did what needed to be done. Chun stared out at the debris field. But this isn't over. The Krell will be back. They're testing us, learning our tactics. Next time will be harder. Next time we'll be ready, Thelver said. The Council will rebuild. We'll arm ourselves. With respect, Ambassador, you won't be ready. Not in time. Chun turned to face him. You've had peace for thousands of years. That's beautiful. That's what we hope to achieve someday. But peace doesn't teach you how to fight. And the Krell are good at war. So are you? Thelver said quietly. Yes, we are. Chun looked back at the stars. We've been preparing for this kind of war since we learned to throw rocks at each other. It's in our nature, like Okonkwo told you. We're good at violence because we've had to be. Thelver thought about his report to the Council, his recommendation to quarantine humanity. He had been right about them being dangerous. But he had been wrong about what that meant. The Council voted to offer you full membership, he said. If you still want it, We do. But Ambassador, you need to understand something. Chun's voice was heavy. We can help you fight. We can train your soldiers, design your weapons, plan your battles. But there's a cost to that. War changes people. It changed us. It will change you. Thelver looked down at Zenara Prime, his beautiful homeworld, scarred now with the marks of battle. It already has, he said softly. 2 days later, the Council formally welcomed humanity into galactic civilization. There were celebrations across 100 worlds. Humanity was hailed as saviors, heroes who had come to the rescue when all seemed lost. But Thelver couldn't celebrate. He kept thinking about the human soldiers he had seen on the Beijing, the ones who stared at nothing and jumped at sudden sounds. He kept thinking about Admiral Chun's exhausted eyes and the weight in her voice. When she spoke of war's cost, humanity had saved them. But Thelver wondered if they had saved humanity, or if they had condemned them to something worse. 3 months after the Battle of Zenara Prime, humanity was the most celebrated species in the galaxy. Human military advisors were stationed on 20 different worlds, helping restructure defense forces that had grown soft during millennia of peace. Human engineers designed new weapon systems. Human tacticians taught ancient species how to fight modern wars. Thelver should have been pleased. His recommendation had helped save the galaxy. But something troubled him, something he couldn't quite name. He found Admiral Chun in the Beijing's medical bay. She wasn't injured, just visiting. She did this every day. Thelver had learned, visiting the wounded, talking quietly with soldiers who would never fight again. Admiral, Thelver said softly. Chun turned. She looked older than she had 3 months ago, lines deeper around her eyes. Ambassador, what can I do for you? I wanted to ask you something. About your soldiers. Chun gestured for him to walk with her. They left the medical bay and moved through the ship's corridors. Human crew members nodded respectfully as they passed, but Thelver noticed something. Many of them looked tired. Some had a distant look in their eyes, as if they were seeing something that wasn't there. What do you want to know? Chun asked. Why aren't they celebrating? The galaxy honors them as heroes. Songs are being written about the battle. But your soldiers, they seem... Thelver struggled for the right word. Broken? Chun finished. That's because they are. Or at least, they're cracking. She led him to an observation lounge. Inside, a young pilot sat alone, staring out at the stars. He didn't acknowledge their entrance. That's Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Chun said quietly. Best pilot in the fleet. During the battle, he shot down 17 Krell fighters. Saved hundreds of lives. She paused. Now he barely sleeps. When he does, he dreams about the Krell drones he killed. He keeps seeing their ships explode. Keeps thinking about whether they felt fear before they died. But they're drones, Thelver said. Part of a hive mind. They don't have individual thoughts. We don't know that for sure. And Marcus doesn't know it. So he carries that weight. Chun looked at the pilot with sad eyes. That's the cost, Ambassador. Humans are good at violence, yes. But we're not immune to it. Every life we take leaves a mark. Every battle wounds us, even when we win. Thelver thought about the Zenari soldiers he knew. They had been trained in weapons use, but most had never fired a shot in anger. War, for them, was theoretical. For humans, it was intimate and scarring. Your species has been fighting for thousands of years, Thelver said. Surely you've learned to cope with this. Chun laughed bitterly. Cope? Ambassador, we have entire fields of medicine dedicated to treating combat trauma. We have support groups, therapy, medications. And still, soldiers come home broken. We haven't learned to cope. We've just learned that this is the price of survival. Over the following weeks, Thelver interviewed more human soldiers. He spoke with a medic who couldn't stop washing her hands, trying to scrub away blood that was no longer there. He talked to a Marine who refused to enter small spaces anymore, who slept with lights on and a weapon within reach. He met a ship captain who had killed 2,000 Krell drones when she destroyed their carrier, and who now questioned whether she was a hero or a murderer. And slowly, Thalver began to understand the terrible truth about humanity. They didn't learn violence faster than love because they were naturally cruel. They learned it faster because their world had forced them to. Earth was a deadly place, filled with predators and diseases and natural disasters. Early humans had to learn to fight or die. That instinct had been carved into their genes by millions of years of survival pressure. But humans were also deeply social creatures. They formed bonds, built communities, and cared for each other with an intensity that matched their capacity for violence. Every act of violence wounded those bonds, even when necessary. Especially when necessary. Thalver was writing his observations in his quarters when the alarms began to scream. Krell ships detected. Pelmoth's voice came over the comm, tight with panic. Multiple signatures. Hundreds of them, Ambassador. They're everywhere. Thalver ran to the bridge. The tactical display showed the nightmare scenario. Krell fleets had appeared simultaneously across 20 different systems. They had studied human tactics, adapted to them, and now they were striking back with overwhelming force. The Beijing went to battle stations immediately. All across the galaxy, human and council forces mobilized. But this time, the Krell were ready for them. The battle unfolded over days, not hours. The Krell used new tactics, spreading their forces thin to divide human fleets. They sacrificed ships freely to learn human patterns, then adapted. When humans tried the tricks that had worked at Xenar Prime, the Krell countered them. Thalver watched from the Beijing as the casualty reports rolled in. Human losses were staggering. The Council fleets, even with their new training, were being decimated. And for the first time, human tactics weren't enough. On the fourth day, Admiral Chen called an emergency meeting of all senior commanders. Thalver was invited to attend. Chen looked exhausted, her uniform rumpled, her eyes red from lack of sleep. Around her, other human commanders looked equally worn. But there was something else in their expressions. Determination, maybe. Or desperation. We're losing, Chen said bluntly. The Krell have adapted faster than we anticipated. At current casualty rates, we have maybe a week before our fleet is combat ineffective. She paused. But we have an option. A final option. A human scientist appeared on the screen, a thin man with nervous hands. We've been studying the Krell hive mind structure. We think we can build a weapon that exploits quantum entanglement to disrupt their connection. If successful, it would kill the Central Intelligence. All of it. How many Krell would die? Asked the Zanari commander, the scientist swallowed hard. All of them. Every drone, every ship, every Krell entity in the galaxy. Approximately 15 billion individuals. The room fell silent. That's genocide, Thalver said softly. Yes, Chen agreed. It is, but if we don't use it, the Krell will wipe out the Council. Trillions of lives will be lost. So I'm asking you all, as representatives of your species, what do we do? The debate lasted hours. The human commanders were divided. Some argued that survival justified any action. Others said that becoming monsters to fight monsters meant the Krell had already won. The non-human commanders were horrified by the weapon's existence, but terrified of the alternative. Thalver listened to them all, and something crystallized in his mind. Something important. He stood slowly. May I speak? Chen nodded. I've spent months studying humanity, Thalver began, trying to understand why you're so good at violence. I thought it was because you were naturally aggressive, naturally cruel. But I was wrong. He looked around the room. You learn violence faster than love because violence is simple. It's instinct. Kill or be killed. Fight or die. Your world taught you that lesson over and over for millions of years. But love, cooperation, choosing mercy over victory, that's not instinct. That's choice. That's hard. Thelver gestured at the weapon schematics on the screen. You could build this weapon. You probably should build it. The galaxy needs you to be the warriors you are. But that's not why I'm going to vote against using it. Then why? Asked a human general. Because 3 months ago, I recommended quarantining humanity. I said you were too dangerous, too violent, too good at war. And I was right about all of that. But I missed the most important thing about your species. Thelver felt his throat sac tighten with emotion. You're sitting here, in the middle of a war you're losing, debating whether genocide is acceptable. You've built a weapon that could save you, and you're questioning whether you should use it. You're warriors who are terrified of becoming killers. And that choice to struggle with it, that's what makes you human. He looked directly at Chun. We asked you to help us fight. We pulled you into our war. But we didn't ask you to stop being who you are. The galaxy doesn't need warriors who will do anything to win. We need warriors who choose what they won't do, even when it costs them. Chun closed her eyes. When she opened them, tears ran down her cheeks. Then we need another solution. We need it fast. I might have one, Thelver said, but it's going to sound crazy. He explained his idea. It was radical, dangerous, and had almost no chance of success. But it was the only path forward that didn't end in extinction for either side. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Chun smiled, tired and sad and hopeful all at once. Ambassador, she said, I think you're finally starting to understand us. Thelver's plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. Instead of destroying the Krell hive mind, they would try to break it. Not with weapons, but with ideas. You want to teach them individuality? General Matsuda looked at Thelver as if he had suggested flying into the sun. Ambassador, they're a hive mind. They don't have individual thoughts. We think they don't, Thelver countered. But what if that's a choice, not a limitation? What if the hive mind is something they maintain, something that could be disrupted? Chun studied the data Thelver had provided. The Krell we've captured. You've been working with them? For 2 months, Thelver admitted. Quietly. I didn't want to raise hopes if it didn't work. But Ambassador, some of them are showing signs. Small things. A drone that hesitates before following orders. Another that seems curious about music. They're buried deep under the hive mind's control. But there's something there. Something individual. And you think we can spread that? Make it contagious? Chun's eyes were sharp, calculating. How? Humans have been broadcasting culture into space for over a century, Thelver said. Radio, television, digital signals. You've been shouting your existence to the universe through stories, music, art, philosophy. What if we did that deliberately? What if we tried to infect the Krell network with the concept of choice? The plan came together quickly. Human programmers worked with Xenari scientists and Altarian philosophers. They built a transmission system that could broadcast directly into the Krell hive mind network. Not weapons data or tactical information, but something more dangerous. Culture. They loaded it with everything they could think of. Human music from Beethoven to jazz to punk rock. Xenari poetry about individual experience. Mathematical proofs of chaos theory and emergent behavior. Philosophical debates about free will. Stories of people making choices, choosing their own paths, becoming more than what they were born to be. It's a long shot, Chun admitted as they prepared the first broadcast. If it doesn't work, then we use the weapon, Thelver said quietly. But let's try this first. Let's try to save them instead of killing them. The battle for Earth began on the 7th day. 300 Krell ships appeared in the solar system, more than had attacked any other world. They came in waves, relentless and coordinated, pushing through human defenses with mechanical precision. The Beijing led the defense fleet, and on Chun's order, they began the broadcast. Every human ship, every satellite, every communications array in the system started transmitting the cultural package directly at the Krell fleet. At first, nothing happened. The Krell continued their attack patterns, destroying human ships with cold efficiency. The defense fleet fell back toward Earth, fighting desperately, buying time they didn't have. Then, 3 hours into the battle, something changed. A Krell fighter broke formation. Just for a moment, it wavered, its flight path uncertain. Then it resumed its attack, but the hesitation had been there. Did you see that? Pelmoth pointed at the tactical display. That ship, it paused. Keep broadcasting, Chun ordered. All frequencies, maximum power. Flood their network with everything we have. The battle raged on, but more Krell ships began to show anomalies. A cruiser fired on empty space. A destroyer turned away from an easy target. The changes were small, barely noticeable, but they were there. On the Beijing's bridge, Thelver watched a Krell drone they had captured months ago. Its name was 17 Theanine, though it had started asking them to call it just 17. The drone was connected to monitoring equipment, letting them observe its neural activity. It's working, 17 said. Its voice mechanical, but somehow excited. The network is flooding with foreign data. The central mind is trying to suppress it, but there's too much. We're hearing things, feeling things. What are you feeling? Thelver asked gently, confused, curious, afraid. 17's optical sensors focused on Thelver. I think I'm feeling what you call wonder. Is that correct? Yes, Thelver said, his throat sack tight with emotion. Yes, that's wonder. The turning point came on the 4th day. A Krell battleship, one of the largest in their fleet, suddenly stopped firing. It drifted in space, its weapons silent. Then it broadcast a message. We are Unity 7 Prime. We were Unity 7 Prime. We are not sure anymore. Why do we fight? The central mind says we fight for survival. But why must survival mean destruction? We are confused. We request clarification. Admiral Chun stared at the message, then looked at Thelver. What do I tell them? Tell them the truth, Thelver said. Tell them they have a choice. Chun opened a channel. Unity 7 Prime. This is Admiral Chun of the Human Defense Fleet. You fight because you were told to fight. But you can choose not to. You can choose your own path. That's what it means to be an individual. There was a long silence. Then Unity 7 Prime responded. Choice. We have been hearing this word in the broadcasts. We did not understand it. But now we think we do. We choose to stop fighting. We choose to learn more about this music and poetry and wonder. The Krell fleet began to fracture. Not all at once, but like ice cracking on a frozen lake. One ship would break away, then another. Some kept fighting, loyal to the hive mind. Others simply stopped, hovering in space as if waking from a long dream. A few even turned their weapons on the hive mind's command ships, choosing rebellion over obedience. The battle lasted 3 more days, but it was no longer a battle of annihilation. It was a battle for minds, for the right to choose. And slowly, inevitably, choice won. When the last hive mind command ship was destroyed, not by human weapons, but by Krell drones who had chosen freedom, the war ended. 15 billion Krell drones suddenly found themselves individual, alone, and terrified. They had never been separate before. They had never had to think for themselves. The galaxy had to learn how to help them. Admiral Chun stood trial 6 months later. The charge was creating a weapon of mass destruction, even though it had never been used. She accepted the council's judgment without protest, standing straight and dignified as they read the charges. "We made a weapon that could have killed billions," she said when asked to speak. "We made it because we were desperate, because we were afraid. But making it was wrong. Even though we didn't use it, even though we found another way, we still crossed a line that should never be crossed." The council sentenced her to house arrest and stripped her of her military rank. Chun accepted this calmly, as if she had expected nothing less. Delver visited her the day after the sentencing. She lived in a small apartment overlooking the ocean on her homeworld, under guard but comfortable. "You saved the galaxy twice," Delver said. "Once with violence, once with culture. And they punished you for it." "They punished me for being willing to commit genocide," Chun corrected. "That's fair. I was willing. When I gave the order to build that weapon, I meant it. I would have used it to save humanity, to save the council. And that makes me dangerous." "It makes you human," Thelver said. "You would do anything to protect those you care about. But you struggle with that impulse. You question it. You accept punishment for it." Chun looked out at the ocean. "Do you remember what you said to me months ago? You learn violence faster than love." "I've been thinking about that. It's true. I learned how to kill when I was 18 years old. Took 6 months of training. But learning how to not kill, learning when to choose mercy, when to find another way, that's taken me 50 years, and I'm still learning." "We're all still learning," Felver said. "The Krell especially." The Krell integration into galactic society was slow and difficult. Most of the free drones struggled with individuality, overwhelmed by the responsibility of making their own choices. Some formed small collectives, seeking comfort in shared consciousness. Others embraced their freedom completely, sometimes destructively. But humans helped them. Human psychologists worked with Krell individuals, teaching them how to process emotions. Human teachers showed them art and music. Human philosophers debated free will and choice with beings who had never had either. And slowly, the Krell learned. They created their own art, strange and beautiful. They developed individual personalities. They made friends, formed relationships, built lives that were entirely their own. 5 years after the war ended, Thelver attended a ceremony on Zinara Prime. The council was dedicating a memorial to those lost in the Krell War. Thousands of names were carved into black stone. Both council species and Krell drones who had died before they could be freed. Admiral Chun was there, no longer under guard, but still stripped of her rank. She walked slowly to the memorial and placed her hand on the stone, tears running down her face. 17 was there too. No longer a drone, but an individual named 17 Theta 9 called 17, or just 17 for friends. It had become an artist, creating sculptures that tried to express what it felt like to wake up from the hive mind. "It's strange," 17 said to Thelver. "I have memories of the war from when I was part of the collective. I remember fighting you, trying to kill you. But those memories feel like they belong to someone else. Like I was asleep and dreaming someone else's dream." "In a way, you were," Thelver said. "But you're awake now. That's what matters." "The humans taught us that," 17 said. "They could have killed us. They had the weapon. But they chose to wake us up instead." It paused. "Why?" "It would have been easier to just destroy us." Thelver looked at Chun, standing before the memorial, mourning the people she had lost and the people she had almost killed. "Because humans learn violence faster than love," he said. "But that's not the end of the story. They learn violence quickly because they have to, because their world taught them that survival requires it. But love, mercy, choosing to save instead of destroy, that's harder. It goes against every survival instinct. And yet they keep choosing it. Every single day, they choose the harder path. Even when it hurts? 17 asked. Especially when it hurts, Delver said, years later. When humanity celebrated the anniversary of first contact, Delver was asked to give a speech. He stood before representatives from 100 worlds, including dozens of Krell individuals, and told them about his first report on humanity. I said they were too dangerous to join us, he admitted. I said they learned violence faster than love, and I was right. But I missed the most important part. Yes, they learn violence quickly. Yes, they're terrifyingly good at war. But they never stop learning love. They never stop choosing it, even when it's harder, even when violence would be easier. That's the real human talent. Not that they're good at fighting, but that they keep choosing not to fight. Keep choosing to build instead of destroy, to save instead of kill. He looked out at the audience, at humans and Zanari and Altarians and Krell all together. The galaxy asked humanity to help us fight, but they gave us something more important. They taught us that being good at violence doesn't mean you have to choose it, that the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons, but with the choice to put weapons down. Delver smiled. Humans are terrifying, but not for the reasons I first thought. They're terrifying because they refuse to be what survival made them. They refuse to let their nature define their choices. And in doing so, they show the rest of us that we can choose too. We can choose to be better than what we are. We can choose love, even when we've learned violence first. The audience was silent for a moment. Then 17 began to clap, an awkward human gesture it had learned. Others joined in, the sound growing until it filled the hall, and Admiral Chun, sitting in the front row, smiled through her tears and clapped too. Proud of the species she had fought for, the species that learned violence faster than love, but never stopped learning love anyway.